to the Gaming Discourse. I'm Tyler Frater alongside Richard D. the Cruz.
I am here.
And Chief Engineer Lieutenant Commander Connor Frater.
Good evening.
It is Monday, October 28th, 2024. Go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Gaming Discourse, patreon.com/The Gaming Discourse, where you can support us for $247, $10. Get your name in the video credits, early access to our videos, access to our Discord server, and more. Have a new video out right now about a little game called Flathead, which is an indie horror, a very strange, very cool indie horror game that released over the summer. It's been sort of taken up space in my brain, and I wanted to make a video about it because I had some thoughts on it, and I did. So yeah, go check it out. It's called Flathead is a horror game that shouldn't exist. And I say it shouldn't exist because some of the way that it's designed and stuff like that doesn't totally make sense. It's set in sort of a liminal building. It's very strange where the main gameplay is an over-under machine. It's very simple. So, sports over-under. It's like, is the score of the game going to be 60 points over-under? And you bet on that, right? So in Flathead, a machine, you're in front of this machine, you're strapped to a chair, and a big number appears on a screen. Let's say it's 15. You have to choose between 1 and 20. Is the next number going to be over or under that number, right? And you have to do the odds in your head. 15, odds are it'll be under, right? If it's a number like 9, then it'll probably over. So that's the basic of the gameplay, but there's some kind of monster that's behind you, creeping up slowly as you're doing this, as you're operating this machine. You can't really see it. You can kind of turn your head a little bit and see it out of your peripheral vision. But you only have so much time to get enough guesses right and get enough points to escape, essentially, before this monster catches up with you and something happens. So I talk about all of it in the video. Go check it out. It's one of my favorite games this year. And the developer Tim Oxton is using it as a sort of like an intro. It's somehow connected to a game he's been working on for a while called Silk Bulb Test, which is another very creepy looking game. But yeah, go check it out. Flathead YouTube channel. And if you follow us on Patreon, I'll have an update on some other projects with the weekly updates sometime this week. Okay, so we're all back for the I don't remember if we were all together 2 weeks ago or not. It seems like we've had a weird
before
summer.
Before I left I was here. Yeah.
But I've played a ton of games. Connor, you said you played games. Richard, you've said you played games. So Richard, why don't you start off with what you have been playing?
Stuff I've just been continuing on, mostly Castlevania, of course, trying to wrap up the Dominus collection. I did beat Castlevania Portrait of Ruin the other night, which is the second in the quote-unquote trilogy of DS games. And I still think that it is my favorite DS game because it has a certain aesthetic that I enjoy.
Favorite DS game period or favorite Castlevania?
Castlevania DS game, yeah. It has this you have a duo character system where you can switch between both on the fly. You can either keep them out on the field or store them for other opportunities. And it is a nice little change of pace, but it's a more modern Castlevania, so it takes place during World War II. And there's
interesting.
There's a vampire. His name is Count Bronner, and he's an artist. He actually is based off of a real artist from back then, but he is using the despair from World War II to create works of art that house essentially those snapshots of what he sees, and you have to jump in there Mario 64 style and kind of explore those areas.
Oh, interesting. That's cool.
So you do have the central Dracula Castlevania area, and then you have 5 hubs or 4 hubs that you go into. There's a war-torn village. There's a carnival that's been caught in the crossfire of World War II, and then there's Egypt. And then I think there's another, I think it's London. It looks like a London town, but it's just kind of not a village, but just a small city. But I like that game aesthetically. But I enjoy the characters and I enjoy the story, but I beat that and I moved on to the last one, which is Castlevania Order of Ecclesia. And I think 2 hours into this one, I don't want to say I'm having second thoughts, but Order of Ecclesia is making me feel like by the end of it, this might be my favorite one.
Oh wow!
So I've never beaten Order of Ecclesia. I've played a couple of hours of it and I liked it. But it's very funny looking back at long-running franchises and playing them again and kind of seeing the growth of the team who makes it. And you would think that Konami, the team who did the Castlevania series, would have learned how to operate a formula that they had since 1997. But they would always miss something. In the GBA games, there was always something really good about each one, but there would be drastic like drawbacks to each one. And the same goes with the DS games. Like they kind of picked up where they left off, but there was always something missing. And I think Order of Ecclesia has the most well-rounded catch-all of the trilogy of games. Its visuals are gorgeous. Its backgrounds are very full of life, and the character models are also very detailed, a lot bigger than the Portrait of Ruin characters were. It's difficult, which is good. They have you have magic, so there's like elements, but they now factor in weaknesses or strengths of enemies against those. So it's because of that, it's become difficult. For some good, for some bad. I think the biggest drawback might be that they changed the exploration system from Dracula's castle, like every game is, to points in a country. So you have a hub world and you choose where to go. Do I want to go to the forest? Do I want to go to a village? Do I want to go to the sea where there's a shipwreck? Do I want to go to a lighthouse right next to it? And you have to perform tasks in those smaller like hub worlds that have its own exploration.
This sounds so. Whenever I hear you talk about DS games, I particularly get a feeling of, I don't know, sadness, I guess, in a sense, because I never had a DS. And what you're describing is so intricate, and just sounds so freaking cool. And it's on the DS, you know?
Yes.
So it's like there's a whole generation of games, specifically handheld games, that it's like, damn, there's some really cool stuff out there that, you know, unless you're emulating it or you find a DS somewhere, which actually I have a DS on the table, now that I think about it, strangely enough.
Hey, what the hell?
I know, that's not mine. But funny enough, I've got a DS right there. Now, do you know how to hack those and put games on them?
I could probably.
Okay, that's not mine. I'll have to talk to someone.
You probably
but anyway. But anyway, I just wanted to say that because that sounds really neat in terms of like the setup and stuff. You know?
Sure. Yeah, it is really neat and really unique, but that is also one of the drawbacks of specifically Nintendo. Like Nintendo consoles, you can, and handhelds. I think it's just handhelds. Yeah. Because at a certain point, you know, for the longest time, children had a handhelds because it's that thing you gave to them to shut them up, you know. And so yeah, there's a lot of things that people, and then on that handheld, what are you playing? You're playing Mario. You're playing Mario Kart. So it's like you're playing those games that are focused on people, so you lose track of the unique ones. But as much as like going around to those areas is really cool, and you're finding villagers to save, there's actually a main village that you can go to, and that's where you'll find when you save the blacksmith. You'll, you know, he's like, hey, find me some more, I'll make you a weapon.
It's sort of Dark Souls in that way.
Yeah, you'll find a seamstress. She's like, I'll make you a dress, and it's very cool because the main character's like, well, I don't wear dresses, and she's like, oh, well, I'll find something, you know, I'll do something, and so that's where you rest and all that. The problem being is that much like, I guess I'll say the Souls games, there's a little less direction than Castlevania games usually give you. So I don't know what to do next. Because I don't have an exact go here and do this. Because if something is happening on the map where it shows you where you can go, it'll point to it and it'll say new. And so none of my places say that, and I don't exactly know where to go next. I'm probably just going to look it up because I mean I'm not too worried about a 2008 DS game, like, and you know, struggling to get through it and whatnot. But there's a lot of quality of life stuff when it comes to the Dominus collection, because being a DS game, it has to have 2 screens. So the resolution is kind of cut up, and then on the side you will have another square that shows like the logo, but underneath you will have a square that shows all the pertinent information that would be on the second screen. So if I hit a skeleton on the corner, it'll show me the skeleton, it'll show me the name of him, it'll show me its like entry in the dictionary, and it'll show me what he's weak to, what he's strong against, and then
cool.
it'll show me like question marks and like 4 stars, which generally means, oh, he has an item that he'll drop eventually if I kill him.
A little
and it's
scouting
like a 4-star.
report.
Yeah. Thankfully, there's like nothing tied to that, but it is also, you get that itch of like, oh man, this little stupid fish that takes me like 3 hits to kill, like has a 5-star item. So what is it? I got to get it. You know, so you get those a little bit. I'm having fun with that. Those 2. I did try out Throne and Liberty for like 15 minutes.
Oh, yes.
And then I said no.
You didn't like that one.
Yeah, because it's one of those weird MMOs where everything about it screams action hack and slash. And then you play it and it's one of those, it's like a really good example is KOTOR.
Okay.
Because you think KOTOR, I got a lightsaber, I can like hack and slash and swing, and then it's just like, swords. It's kind of that halfway point between action and like waiting, you know?
Yeah, because that was like it was a real time, because KOTOR was real time with pause.
Yes, yeah. So it was like, ooh, and I was kind of like, I just don't want another thing that is going to take my time that I can't have right now, because once again, it's going to be November and I've still not started Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I still haven't beaten several other games that I've started and completed. So I'm trying to be like, no, I have to do something now because I'm going to have nothing to talk about with our year-end wrap-up. So.
I played 2008's Castlevania.
Yeah,
everybody.
Right. It was new to me this year.
Yeah, exactly.
Game of the year.
DS game. Big upset. Okay, cool. Connor? What you been up to?
I've been playing more of Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader, and I started up a little bit of I have to remember the title because it's a ridiculous title. It's Battlefleet Gothic Armada 2, I think.
Okay,
sounds like a winner.
I know, which is another 40k game, but it's all about like it's the computer version of the old Battlefleet Gothic tabletop game, which is like X-Wing, only with 40k. So learning how to play that, maneuvering around, getting to use some of like the more iconic iconic ships from the setting, or battle stations from the setting, seeing them in game. It was fairly fun. It does seem a bit light on gameplay. The prologue, it is just a prologue, but it was only maybe 40 minutes worth of like actual gameplay with like tutorials involved. So hopefully the further it goes, the more open and free form it gets. But with Rogue Trader, getting to the more core of the game and navigating the politics of 40k, which is very interesting. But other than that, nothing much.
Alrighty, so I finished a lot because I'm trying to pack in a lot for Dragon Age Inquisition. Dragon Age, the Veilguard that comes out in 3 days or whatever. I finished Silent Hill 2, the remake. I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. I thought there were way too many enemies in some parts, which was a disappointment because when the game slows down and is quiet, it is much better. But there are times when it really wants you to fight enemies, and instead of, I don't know, it just, the combat, like I said last week, the horror in Silent Hill is the atmosphere the combat sort of lends itself to the atmosphere rather than the combat being the centerpiece and the atmosphere being sort of the thing that surrounds it, as you may find in a Resident Evil. And I wasn't a fan of that, especially in the prison, which is like the third huge set piece of the game. In the prison, there are enemies all over the place, and there's the mannequins they hide in different places. The AI and how the mannequins work is actually really freaking cool. They'll sit there, and if you spot them with your flashlight, when you aim, if you don't shoot fast enough, your light will flicker, and they'll jump out of the way and then try and attack you from like a different angle. So as soon as you spot one, because they're always hiding like up against a door or under a desk, as soon as you see it with your peripheral vision, you kind of have to know that as soon as you aim for it, you have to take a shot, or else they're going to try and scurry away. And they'll also, like, if you shoot, they'll run away and hide behind other things, hide behind doors and stuff like that. So they can be fun. They can, in a vacuum, it's a cool idea. It's a cool enemy to fight. But especially in the prison, there's just way too many of them. The combat is fine, but it just doesn't, it's not a game where that you can lean on the combat a whole lot in Silent Hill 2. That's not what makes the game good. But toward the end, the game, there wasn't as much combat and things got better. And I finished it and I enjoyed it. I would say if anyone wants to play Silent Hill 2 for the first time, I would say, I'm not sure what I would recommend, because I do think they are two different experiences. The first Silent Hill, the original Silent Hill 2 is much, I think in some ways, much slower and quieter and muted. This one is not, but this one, the performances are excellent. The atmosphere is very good. They redid the, there's a boss fight where you fight a weird guy who's in a painting. I don't know if you remember that, but, or in like it's kind of, I'm not even sure what he's in, but the point is they completely redid that boss fight. It's completely redone in the remake, and it's very good. It's very cool how they did it. So there's that. And some things they really didn't change that much, which I thought was cool as well. So I think the things that they changed, in my mind, seem like it's fine. They removed pieces of the endings. They aren't there in the new endings. The new endings are different. The same thing happens, but you just see a different part of it. So I got the in water ending this time, which a lot of people, I think, consider sort of the canon ending. I won't say what happens, but I watched the original In Water ending, and the way it's shot and the scenes are different from this, even though they both end in the same place. So I'm not sure how people will feel about that, but overall, a positive experience. There were times I was like, this may be my game of the year, and then as the game went on, I was like, this is really good, but I still feel like Astrobot gave me like, made me had the most fun. So Astrobot thus far is still my game of the year. Okay, and then what was and then I finished Assassin's Creed Mirage. Assassin's Creed, if you're looking for a really slimmed down, very focused open world, Assassin's Creed Mirage is the game for you. You don't have to do any side activities in that one. It's helpful if you do, because you get these coins, and in some levels it's like, talk with this guy and see if he gives you information about an assassination target. And when you talk with him, he wants to be bribed, and you can't just pay them gold or money. You have to pay them these like special tokens, and to get these tokens you have to explore or do side quests. So there is a little there definitely are some benefits to doing the side activity, but if you mainline Assassin's Creed Mirage, I think it's a really solid, very basic third-person stealth game that doesn't throw a whole lot of flash at you, but what it does really well. I do think it's interesting because one of the things that we've talked about with Space Marine 2 is a lot of people praised it for being sort of an older style game, right? And that's Assassin's Creed Mirage as well.
Yeah.
But Mirage didn't get that same sort of adulation. Mirage got okay reviews, and then people sort of moved on. it didn't have that same conversation did not happen with Mirage. So I'm curious why. So maybe it's because we hadn't gotten a game like Space Marine 2 in so long, and also it's set in a universe that we haven't seen presented them that way for so long, where Mirage is different. Mirage is it's still Assassin's Creed, just with some of the more complex parts siphoned off. I don't know. But in any case, finished it, enjoyed it, and I'm glad I played it, because I did miss some of that solid Assassin's Creed stealth, so I'm excited for Assassin's Creed Shadows. And then, Connor, you talked about mouthwashing last week. The weird horror game made, I don't remember who the developer is. I want to say indie horror, but I think they have a developer. I think they have a publisher. It has sort of PS1 kind of style graphics. It's a very strange setup. And it's about 2.5 hours long, so that's nice, because it was like the length of a movie, which is nice.
Yeah.
But my takeaway, I finished it today. It reminded me a lot of Alien, because it's set on a spaceship, and you have all these sort of people on the ship, and you have a captain, but not very many. It's like a small crew. So in Alien, there's like 7 characters at the beginning of the movie or something like that. There's very few. In Mouthwashing, there's 5 characters, I think. Yeah, I think there's 5 characters total on the ship. Yeah. And they're doing the same thing. It's like a long haul trucking mission in space. And they don't encounter an alien per se, but stuff goes down. And in a very similar fashion, the crew starts to like break down and panic, and that's what sets the stage for the horror. There's one character in the game that even their like jumpsuits look like the jumpsuits that you know Sigourney Weaver and the crew wear,
like
in Alien.
mechanic-esque.
Yeah, kind of mechanic-esque. Yeah. There's a character that looks like Shelley Duvall. Shelley Duvall was not an alien, but this character is sort of constantly in a state of panic. Which there's a character in Alien who kind of looks like Shelley Duvall. I don't remember this actress's name off the top of my head, but she is kind of also in a state of panic while the alien is like attacking. So I thought there were some parallels there. They work for a dystopian company. Same thing with it. So anyway, that was like a parallel that appeared out of my mind. Yeah, and there are a lot of different things in the game that I thought were interesting. The game is about addiction, I think. It's about it has something to do with pregnancy and giving birth. There's some kind of thing there. I haven't totally figured it out. And yeah, because it is best to experience it, so I don't want to give too much away. But and there's also something about like terminal illnesses or taking care of people that can't take care of themselves. There's a lot of interesting writing and a lot of interesting dialogue, and yeah, I'm really glad that I picked it up and played it, because it was a game that I had my eye on, and I'm glad that it's getting good reviews and stuff like that. Did you have any other thoughts about Mouthwashing, Connor, since we talked a little bit about it last week?
Not really. Again, I think it is best experienced, best played, rather than listen to two dudes talk about it. But no, I do think there's a lot of deeper subtext with some of the themes in the story, going beyond just the horrors of like extreme late stage capitalism.
Sure, yeah. And that was something that I appreciated, because I think they delivered it in a lot of interesting ways. There's a point where so it's a horror game, but it's psychological and it's not super scary. It's more tense than anything else. But there's a scene where things get surreal for a second, and there's a TV and on the ship somewhere, and it's like an old style TV, and you go to watch it, and the channels are all these old cartoons from like the 50s, and they're all the cartoons that are like, a worker goes to work for a company, and his company pays him a fair wage for his work. You know, like one of those like instructional things. And so it's definitely there. One of the other channels was something about harnessing the power of the atom. And there's all these like very like American, you know, the American identity from the 1950s. It's or sort of captured by these cartoons, and that identity was like being a working man, and you know, and you followed the rules, and your company was going to pay you. You could you get the picket fence and the car, and you could deposit your money in a bank, and you could save up that money, and you know, so it was very like a cut and dry, clean sort of the type of American life that Don Draper would sell, right? Yeah. Which is what that show is about. But of course, it's like the reality is not necessarily mouthwashing, because mouthwashing is a horror movie. I mean, a horror game. But the reality is sort of different than the sanitized sort of 1950s instructional video, right? But anyway, I would need to play it through again and really think about. I just finished it like a couple hours ago. Think about it more to really understand. But I think in some ways the game hints at sort of the nature of work, the nature of exploitation, and like what these people can and can't do. And then it gets into deeper sort of interpersonal conflict between the characters and how their humanity relates with one another, how their places in life. There's one of the characters is sort of your main engineer, I guess, is sort of an older, gruff guy, and he has an intern with him, and the intern is, you know, he's bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and so their personalities sort of clash with one another. It really well written. I was engrossed the whole time, and it did not feel like 2 hours. It felt much shorter. Which I think is a good thing. So yeah, that's what I've been playing. Is there anything else we would like to talk about? Connor, anything else you want to say about mouthwashing?
Well, I did want to say, do you understand what I meant last week about there is a part with a gun?
Yes, I did. Yeah. Last week I asked Connor, I was like, what kind of game is this? Is this like an action game? Not sure. And Connor's just like, well, there is a part with a gun. So yeah, there is a gun in the game, but
very big.
But it is a narrative. There's light puzzling. You walk around, you talk. Sure. Okay. Are we ready to move on?
Yep.
Yes.
Thanks for listening. If you like our content, please consider subscribing or leaving a like and comment. You can find us at patreon.com/thegamingdiscourse. And our tiers are $2, $4, $7, and $10 and include getting your name in the video credits, early access, and access to our Discord server. Okay, actually, I remembered something else that I played. Demonology on Steam. It's like $2, $3. It's a very, very unsettling horror game where you play as a witch finder, and you're sent to a village, a Scottish village in like 1676 or something like that. And there's purported to be a witch somewhere in the village, and you have to interview all the village people and do some other things to the village people, as in torture them. And you have to find out who the witch is. That is a game with a much simpler message and theme to it.
What was the game called again?
It's called Demonology, but it's spelled in like Old English. It's like
Daemon.
Demonology. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So go check. Yeah, I would also recommend that. It has really creepy stop motion cutscenes and stuff. I would. Yeah.
Rad.
Yeah.
This looks like an Old English version of World of Horror.
Yes. Yeah. I only played the demo of World of Horror. I wish, I want to go back to it really badly.
Damn.
But,
I think I know somebody who really liked that game.
Yeah. So check that out. That's perfect. And that game is only like an hour long. It's very short. It's very simple. There's not a whole lot to it, but that's a game where, after you finish it, the sort of the message and the theme of the game is clear. And I think it's clever, not necessarily subtle, but definitely clever and I appreciated it. Anyway, so what were we talking about? Oh, yeah. There's no new exemption for game preservation. So every 3 years, the U.S. Copyright Office sort of reevaluates the digital. I don't remember how exactly this happens, but reevaluates exemptions to the DMCA, right? To say, hey, are things still breaking copyright? What can we need to update this law, whatever. The Video Game History Foundation, alongside the Software Preservation Network, petitioned for the purposes of preservation a removal of two restrictions on libraries. One, the limitation that preserved games can only be accessed by one user at a time, and two, that a game cannot be made available outside the physical premises of the institution. The DVD Copy Control Association, Advanced Access Content System Licensing Administrator, and the ESA opposed Part 1, saying it would not be fair use and that it would cause market harm, and also opposed Part 2. I'm going to read straight from the ruling here. Quote, those groups contended that there would be a significant risk that preserved video games would be used for recreational purposes. They further argued that the expanded exemption would give preservation institutions too much discretion regarding how they provide remote users access to preserved works, and that it did not contain appropriately tailored restrictions to ensure that users would be limited to teaching, research, or scholarship purposes. They believe that removing the premises limitation would also adversely affect the existing market for older video games. The U.S. Copyright Office agreed and denied the exemptions. I'll read a little bit from the Video Game History Foundation's website. They released a statement. If you guys remember, we talked about their study that they released not too long ago about the 80% of games that were once published are now unavailable through various means of digital decay and games going out of print and stuff like that. I'm going to read right here. So this is the Video Game History Foundation. While we are disappointed by the Copyright Office's decision, we have no regrets about going through this process. Over the last 3 years, working on the petition has helped us generate important research. Notably, our survey of the video game reissue market in the United States report, which proved around 87% of video games released in the U.S. before 2010 remain out of print. Our combined efforts with the Software Preservation Network have raised significant public awareness of these issues and have already made an impact throughout the games industry and preservation communities. Okay. What is our reaction to this? What do we think? I think we're all disappointed.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is no market for these older games, at least past a certain. And this might be a conversation that comes up later in later arguments for the changing of these laws. I think one thing that's important to note is that there should be a date for some of these things, much like not licensing, but
are you talking about something going into
what is
public
it
domain?
Domain, like public domain or whatnot.
Public domain.
Not saying public domain, but like the way the video game industry works is much like technology. It doesn't care about the past. Once the next thing is out, you get rid of the old crap. Nobody cares because that's not what makes money. That's exactly what GameStop is doing. GameStop doesn't carry old stuff because it doesn't make money.
Yeah.
It makes enough money for certain communities, certain segments of populations in America, but it doesn't make enough to consistently create an income that Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft want to perceive. And I see that there's the point that you make here with remakes being popular right now. And yes, they are, but it is a very pick and choose market when it comes to remakes.
Yeah.
We have had several remasters or remakes of certain games that either nobody has asked for, which I understand that's a little crass to say that nobody has asked for a remake. It's great that we had a remaster of Rogue Trooper from the PS2 era, but I don't know many people have asked for it. I can't remember the company name right now. Is it Aspire? No, it's not Aspire. Who did the System Shock.
Oh, you're thinking Night Dive.
Yes,
Night Dive Studio.
because they've done
They've done
Turok
System
re-releases.
Shock.
They've done the Shadow Man re-releases. They've done
Shadows of the Empire.
a lot of the Star Wars ones, I think.
They've done a bunch of others that aren't making. They did that one where you play as a chef. It's like a chef FPS. A bunch of games
right.
that are
PO,
like relatively. And I just saw another one that they released today. Yeah, they're doing all kinds of
those games that they're remastering were moderately popular back in the day, but they are easy enough to clean up real quick and then put it out. Because I think someone like Night Dive, to an extent, limited run games. VGP is another player that's coming up in the gaming industry right now. They do want to re-release this stuff on frequent, on newer hardware. But if the big three, as I'll call them, don't want to, then there's no perceivable market right now for this stuff. So what should be done in that instance?
Yeah, and I think so. The when we talk about is there a market for this, and we talk about remakes, there's a lot of nuance to that discussion, because is there a market for Silent Hill 2? And it's like, well, what do you mean by that? Silent Hill 2, it was playable before the remake. You could play it on PC if you got a copy, or you could play it on the PS2. But there wasn't there wasn't a copy that was sort of easy to just click and boot up like with modern Steam games, with the way that resolutions work and with updates to Windows and all kinds of things, all kinds of problems that can creep up with old PC games. There isn't a market for that because companies aren't willing to spend the money for all their titles to get them working on modern systems, so that when you buy it on Steam and you click play, it just goes, right? So that's what creates, along with the desire to see things updated and maybe see new artistic interpretations or whatever, that's what creates the demand for remakes and whatnot. So it's like, I don't know. I don't see, I guess maybe the larger point is I don't see how you can look at the games industry right now and say with a straight face that if we allowed libraries to carry old games, that would somehow endanger the market. I think that's just bullshit. And what it is companies have an iron grip on their IP and they just don't want to give it up. Right. That's really all it's about. It's not about them being scared that, all of a sudden they're going to be competing with libraries. It's not going to happen. So yeah, I just, and with the sheer number of games that are not in circulation right now, it's like if they really cared about that market and if there was just money to be had, they would be putting more money to facilitating that market and to selling games to that market. But they aren't. So instead, they're perfectly fine leaving swaths of games history to sort of wither away, and people on the internet, like the Video Game History Foundation or like Crystal Palace or whatever, to Crystal, is that right? Crystal Palace?
I can't recall their name.
No, that's the soccer team. What am I thinking? What am I thinking of? That they released the Toe Jam and Earl, and I don't remember. Anyway, I want to say it's Crystal Palace, but I don't think that's accurate. Anyway, it's up to these like either Video Game History Foundation, and they're in a tough spot because they are like an official organization, which means they have to play it safe with certain legalities. Or you have people online, and yeah, they don't have to play it safe with certain legalities necessarily, but they do have to be careful of poking the beast of like your Nintendos or whatever.
Right.
And they don't have, because they are extra legal, they don't have the resources that a Video Game History Foundation does. And they don't necessarily have the reach or the ability to make those things accessible to wider audiences or whatever. So there's those factors to consider. I don't know how to like convince. I don't know. I don't know if there is necessarily a way, because it's not about convincing the ESA that games history is important. It's just about, I don't know, finding a way to win in a legal sense, I guess. Yeah, I really don't know. But yeah, this is disappointing, and I remember us reading some of the hysteria from some people that argued for like the ESA and how ridiculous it was, this idea that there was just going to be no market for things anymore, that things were going to go away. I don't know. And like in the case of like System Shock, it's a total remake, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. You can still go out there and buy the original System Shock, but it's a total remake. I don't know. And we could sit here and make the case for why video games are different from other forms of media. Like the only way to get these SOCOM Navy SEAL games is to one, emulate it, or two, have physical PS2 copies. Right. I don't know if they're sold on the PlayStation Store right now. I don't believe so.
No, I don't believe they are.
So you have to have these physical discs, right? Which means you also have to have a PS2.
Yes.
You have to have a working PS2, which means you have to have a working memory card.
Yeah.
And you have to have working controllers. And those controllers, if they're original PS2 controllers, are going to be shoddy and old, which means the way that you control the game isn't going to feel great, because you're playing on an old system with old controllers that's running at 2 frames a second. And back in 2002, that was fine because that was the standard then. But now it's harder to operate in that context because you've got 20 years of working with newer tech that you're used to now. So trying to to bend yourself to those things is more complicated, and that all makes researching things or doing any kind of like archival or academic research difficult because there's all those technical barriers there that are not accommodating to that. So I don't know. The Video Game History Foundation will continue to do its work, I guess, but I don't know. I'm curious how close they feel, if they felt that they're closer this time to getting exemptions, or if they made a better argument, or how much of a case their 87% study made. But I don't know. My disdain for the ESA continues. Go ahead.
No, you reminded me about like something that happened earlier today is probably the most distraught I've been in a while. My working in video game retail, but I posted on Blue Sky about it. I don't know if you follow me, but
I should. I'll follow you right now.
But someone brought in a huge collection today. Gorgeous games. Very, very good, expensive games. And one of them was the Game Boy version of Mega Man 4, which is around like $120. Like it's a $120 game. And I was going to do my due diligence and test it because you want to make sure it's not fake and whatnot. And I noticed that there was some damage on the cartridge. And I was like, well, I got to open this up. It was in a protective case. And I was like, I got to open this up and see if it's good. And I open it up, and the whole corner of the cartridge, the dog got to it or something got to it. And it just completely chewed in. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, okay, well, I can't make this at full price because I gotta, no one's gonna want to pay full price for damage, Okay, so let me open this up. Let me get my heat gun. I can melt the plastic back, and then I can replace the backing to it and make it look at least more presentable than it is now. And as I turn it around to open it up, there's a huge dent in the back that's going inward. And at this point I go, oh no, like I think this is done. And I open it up, and sure enough, the chip on the inside was almost snapped in half. So at that point, I looked at this already $120 game for very specific reasons. Okay, this is one more gone.
Yeah.
I can't do anything about it besides finding a ROM or praying that. I mean, they are on the Nintendo Online store, the online service, which is like, fine, great, that's good and all, but there are people who want this thing, and we can't have it anymore.
Yeah, and there's going to be limitations to physical preservation because things just break down over time.
Yeah.
All of human civilization will be gone at one point, including the digital copies of our games. Unfortunately, the big heat death of the universe will happen, and everything will be frozen, and we'll all be dead, and that'll be fine. But before then, we should do our best to preserve things. And like physical stuff is going to go away quicker, and unfortunately, there's not much you can do about that because they're physical things, so there's going to be limited quantity, right? I was going to say, even when we talk about the services provided like by Nintendo or by Sony, they're not always, you can't just, you have to jump through hoops. You have to subscribe to a certain tier of service. Or Nintendo, you have to, I think it's another thing where you have to have the Nintendo Online, and then you have to download and then the selection of games that they give you isn't.
You're at their beck and their will of like what they decide to put up in that.
Yeah, which sucks and is stupid. Yeah. And I don't know. I don't really know why.
Or you can be Capcom for some weird reason. We don't know why, but PlayStation does the same thing. Like they release classic games, and about 95% of them, 98% of them, you can just purchase. Like you don't have to have a subscription. You can just purchase them, and usually they're like $10 to $15, which is not bad. But two exceptions: Resident Evil Director's Cut and Dino Crisis, which was just released a week or two ago. You can't buy. You can only download them and stream them, so they're like locked to the service.
Oh yeah, and so it's like why?
Once they decide to take them down, or once whatever ends, it's how will I get those again? And obviously they're available in other means, but just that instance is it's a one-off, and it's very weird that I can't purchase this.
Yeah, I don't want to branch out on a too big of a tangent. But it is kind of creepy how much of our content is because of the whittling away of sort of physical ownership and stuff like that, how much of our content is at the mercy of giant corporations that make decisions in clean rooms somewhere with zero oversight or transparency or anything like that. Movies being edited, scenes being taken out, just with zero explanation, and how terrifying it is that kind of thing can happen. And that there's nothing you can do about it. I am curious why it is that you can have digital versions of books, open to be able to be rented or whatever, but you can't do that with games. There's probably an explanation in there somewhere. I didn't read it. I mean, I read the parts about the Video Game History Foundation, but I didn't see.
It was probably Nintendo because they brought forward a lawsuit to Blockbuster and all the rental places in the 90s because they didn't want people renting games.
Okay.
So there's probably something locked in there.
Something to do with that.
Yeah, there's probably
because you can get digital versions of books via libraries, and there's way where you can lock it to like one person at a time or whatever. There's technology. We have that, right?
Yeah.
And if anything, you would think that a digital version of a game where only one person can play it at a time is safer. Is safer from being replicated than a book. Because if you are the person with the digital with the book in front of you when you open it up on a web browser, you can take screenshots or whatever if you really want to steal it that bad. You can't do that with a game because you have to be playing the game, right?
Right.
So I don't know. I'm not sure. I did not know about that. Nintendo
that lawsuit.
Nintendo suing Blockbuster. It seems like the industry at every step has just hated any access to, I don't know, instead of embracing things or trying to figure out how to get it to work, it's been that, or it's been online passes, or trying to kill third-party game sellers and used games. It's been the Xbox One and its stupid fucking check-ins, so they can somehow camp down on physical editions, or trading games or whatever. It's just like, and none of them have been good ideas. And we've gotten here. I don't know. Is there anything else we would like to say about this? I noticed that you said you texted.
I say a lot of things.
But you texted specifically that games are sort of a secondary. You saw this as a sign of games sort of being like an inferior, still sort of an inferior cultural artifact.
Still. I mean, I've said it many times before on this podcast, but games are still, it's very obvious, still seen as things for children, things, toys. They aren't really seen as a true like entertainment medium. I mean, even then, what was it? I'm sorry to bring it up because I hate talking about it when I talk about video games, but it was a shooting like 2 weeks ago or something, and they still try to pin it on video games.
Oh, I did not see that.
Yeah. They still, I forgot what it was. It was big news for the day, but yeah, they still, the excuse was video games, and so never books. It's never movies. It was movies at one point in the 80s.
Yeah, slasher films.
Very quickly, and things like RoboCop. Like RoboCop was a big proponent of that, because the violence. But they moved past that real quick as soon as you could, take control of the character. So ever since, Joe Lieberman in Mortal Kombat and
Jack Thompson,
and Night Trap, in '93, like that's. I think video games have always had that target on them. Despite
and lest we forget that our former president, our dear leader, Mr. Donald Trump, had his whole moment in the video games are taking video games are destroying our youths sunshine. I don't know how much you guys remember that, but oh man, that was the thing that happened in the past 8 years. I don't I think older games, if you want to argue that it's like they're toys for older games, in some respect, you're correct, because that's, in a lot of ways, that's what they were, and that's how executives looked at them. Yes. But I would argue that doesn't make them any less important or anything, right? Right. Especially because the design lessons. I was telling a family member about this. I was telling them about the Atari 2600, and before I played that Atari 50 game, like, I knew how important the Atari 2600 was. But then you play it, and you play that game specifically, and it's like Tim Schafer. Oh yeah, I got into game development because I was modding my 2600. Yeah. Cliff Bleszinski. Oh yeah, I got into gaming because. So it's like all these people, like that sort of second generation of game developers that got their like professional starts in the 80s and 90s. Tim Kaine, I think, even. It all started with the Atari 2600, right?
Commodore 64, yeah.
So it's like, even though the game, but when you play the games, it's like, oh, okay, this is a game where you play as a bug and you move on the side of the screen, and it's very like, but the point necessarily isn't the content, it's what the technology is doing, right? And what it inspired people to do who were young or younger when they played it with their own stuff later on, right? Yeah. So it's like that's the point of history, and that's the point of preserving it. So we can know it, and we can see it, and we ourselves can follow it.
And that also is the importance of, and once again, we'll get into it because video games and politics go hand in hand. They do. I mean,
yes, art and politics go hand in hand.
I just dated 1993, like arguably 10 years after video games started, quote unquote, which obviously is a lie, but but it's important that we do get younger people into these positions who are more familiar with the tech that they grew up with or are more familiar with. Because same thing happened with books hundreds of years ago. Like, only certain people were allowed to read books, and then movies happened,
Yeah.
Well, that was more of a entertainment thing, I think.
Yeah, and books weren't always
war.
Yeah, and books weren't always like you were a big deal if you had a book, back in the 1600s, because books were expensive, and not everybody could own a book, and not everyone had time to learn how to read or read a book. Most people had to till their field or something. But I think one interesting thing that the Atari 2600 of today are kids playing Roblox and Fortnite,
despite whether people like it or not. That's what it is.
And obviously we can talk about how Roblox is exploitative and a haven for all kinds of horrible people. But outside of that, there are 11-year-olds that are just learning to make games and having the time of their lives, and that's really fine. And that's great, because hopefully that inspires them, in 10 years, in 15 years, which I get in some ways we've already seen it. But yeah, like in 10 or in 15, 20 years, we're just going to have a wave of people who got their start messing around with Unreal, right? Which was not anywhere near as accessible 15 years ago, right? It was much harder to to get your start in a development kit or something like that 15 years ago, especially if you were a console gamer. So all that's great. I just wish we would we could find a way to legally preserve our history more easily, especially with, and I don't know, no one's gonna like flock to a library to, I don't know, to play a game. I just that just seems so absurd to me. I know we talked about this like 10 minutes ago, but if you, I don't know, if you want to play something bad enough and it's old enough, there are ways to do it.
Yes.
Like, so the person, let's think about this for a second. Let's say you're a person who has a PC, right? You're a PC gamer. You want to play a really old game. You're a PC gamer, which means you have some familiarity with the tech, with PC gaming.
Yeah, yeah.
And PC gamers generally are going to be a little more into the weeds than a console gamer might be, right? If you're a console gamer and you want to play an old game, you got your services. Other than that, you're shit out of luck. PC gamer, you want to play an old game, okay? How many people out there, if they want to play an old game, wouldn't have the technical and internet savvy know-how to find copies of that game, but would be able to abuse library systems in order to play it for themselves? That just seems like that's a Venn diagram crossover that just would not exist. You know what I mean? It feels like if you're someone who wants to play a really old game and you're like, well, I could abuse this library's checkout system, or I could just find it on the Internet Archive or something like that, and it'll be fine.
You can't anymore, as far as I've seen.
With the Internet Archive?
Yeah. A quick segue. I helped this gentleman come in, and this connects to what you're talking about, how people who have the savvy know-how can do what they can. Apparently, this guy, he had a Lenovo Legion Go. Okay, yeah. He wanted to put emulators on it, and he didn't know how, so he came into the store for me to help him, and I did, because it's easy for me. But apparently, this guy revealed to me that he worked in IT for like somebody else. I don't remember what he worked for, but internally in my head, I was like, "You don't know how to do this? Like, you work in IT?" And it shows how many people don't actually know how to do any of this stuff, and not just don't know how to do any of this stuff, refuse to even find out how to do this stuff, because there are, in my time of modifying like PS3s and more current stuff, man, YouTube is just rife with step-by-step directions on how to do this stuff. And most things now are simply just either drag and drop or go to this website and it'll do it for you, Yeah. But in telling you all of that, I just completely forgot my original point. So forget it.
But I wonder if the market of people like that is really so big that if you made libraries and digital games available, if it would suddenly tank quarterly reports because those companies' games were being purchased. That's the point of this entire thing. That's the reason the ESA is making this argument. And no matter what the ESA says, they don't give a shit about video game history, or else they wouldn't be arguing against the Video Game History Foundation and the Software Preservation Network. So it's just like that scenario in which that guy is a threat to their bottom line if libraries existed, I just don't buy for a second. Now, with the Internet Archive, I know the Internet Archive was being like hacked and stuff.
Oh, that's right.
I didn't. That was a story that I'm not familiar with. I just saw the headlines. I did find a game a couple months ago. I'll just fucking say it. Mercenaries 2 is no longer. You can't get
World in Frames.
Hey, got him. Actually, an incredibly influential series, Mercenaries. Because basically every open world game now is just a remake of Mercenaries.
No, really. Name them.
Well, let's see. There's Far Cry. Far Cry 3. No, yeah, please. What now? Halo Infinite. Yeah, what now, bitch? No, I'm kidding. No,
I'm going to be here for 2 hours.
No, only 2?
No, but Mercenaries 2, right? You can't buy it anywhere. It's not on EA Origin.
Right, yes.
And so if you want to play it, you have to find a disc-based PC copy, or you have to find a 360 copy somewhere. But there are copies on the Internet Archive, and that's how I found it for something. So there's like ways like that, but of course then you get into, then you're downloading stuff from the internet, which is never safe. Anyway, yeah, we're talking in circles. Is there anything else we want to say about this before we move on here?
Oh, sorry to go back to my point. When I was trying to grab games for that guy, I kept going to Internet Archive, and it kept like, sorry, these aren't available anymore. I was like, oh shit.
Yeah, the Internet Archive is going through a lot of stuff right now.
I know
they recently
are,
lost a case against, like, with books and things, and it's kind of it's a rough like.
Well, I don't care because they're right and the government's wrong.
Thank you. Okay, this next story, I just have WoW has a $90 mount. There's a mount that costs $90, or you can get it for a convoluted series of steps wherein there's tokens or something like that. I want to read an IGN story by Wesley M. Poole, really good writer.
He's a very good writer.
Because he explains here. Okay, so reading from IGN's Wesley M. Poole about the $90 mount. There are plenty within and without the World of Warcraft community who are understandably criticizing Blizzard for selling an in-game mount for such an eye-watering price, but some players are insisting the Trader's Gilded Brontosaur is a bargain at $90, and that's because its value in WoW tokens compares favorably to the 5 million in-game gold people paid for the original version of this mount when it was sold for a limited time back in 2018. Okay. WoW tokens can be exchanged for Battle.net balance, not just game time, which means players can indirectly buy anything Blizzard sells for real-world money with in-game gold. Here's how it works. Players can buy a WoW token from Blizzard for $20 and either keep it for later or put it on the in-game auction house. Another player will, hopefully, buy that token from the auction house for in-game gold, then exchange it for $15 of Battle.net balance. Blizzard effectively takes a $5 tax from the transaction. Battle.net balance can then be used to buy anything Blizzard sells for World of Warcraft for real-world money, including $90 mounts, such as the Trader's Gilded Brontosaur. This method relies on players selling WoW tokens in the game's auction house, and right now they're scarce because so many players are snapping them up to use to buy this mount. Because of that, WoW tokens are selling out, and their price in gold has skyrocketed. Okay, so I don't know if you guys had a whole lot to say about this or any opinions. I guess we talked about Star Citizen last week, Connor's favorite game, and definitely going to be game of the year when it releases.
One of these years.
When it releases.
Game of the millennia.
Releases this year. But we had the conversation about Star Citizen where it's like a lot of this stuff is enabled because people no longer... There are huge swaths of people that play a game. They play Star Citizen. Okay. And that's what they spend their money on. Or they play WoW. Or they play Diablo, right? It's like, these are the things that I play. And they pour inordinate amounts of cash into those things because that's just what they do. And so it has created, I don't know, I'm not saying necessarily anything new, but it has created an environment where this sort of thing, which I think is wrong, is able to happen because every live service or subscription-based or anything like that game out there just needs to find a sort of captured audience, and then it can monetize that audience. And that sucks, and I don't like that. So yeah, I don't know how much is fair to pay for an in-game item. There's a difference between value and price. We can talk about collector's market stuff, but that's different because we're talking about physical items. But this stuff bothers me because I just hate that we live in that world where digital items that are sold for a limited time, even though they are infinitely replicable, I go for this much money And this signals to people that this sort of economy is okay in video games when it's not. What's really happening is a disproportionately small part of an audience is willing to pay way too much money for this kind of stuff. And that's fine. I'm never going to judge people for doing that. But then executives see this and they make decisions like BioWare is going to make Anthem, or Rocksteady is going to make Suicide Squad, and it's going to be a live service game. And those are the ripple effects of this kind of economy and this kind of I was going to say microtransaction, but this kind of purchase, I guess. Yeah. So I think it's dystopian and I think it sucks. It's not a new thing at all. Stuff like this has been going on forever. Star Citizen has ships you can buy for thousands of dollars. Mm-hmm. So it's not necessarily a new thing. I just kind of wanted to, I don't know, put my 2 cents out there. Maybe it's because I'm in a bad mood, because the Yankees are definitely going to lose the World Series, and my favorite football teams suck. But anyway, do we have am I wrong? Do we have thoughts on this? I don't know. What do you guys
No,
think?
I mean you're wrong. You're not wrong. Oh my god.
Whoa, okay.
Jesus. I messed up my words. No, I don't think you're wrong. And we talk about it all the damn time. Like, these types of transactions don't need to exist in our games, et cetera, et cetera. But I will say that when this news hit, maybe it's because it's Blizzard, maybe it's because it's World of Warcraft, maybe it's because microtransactions have been around for so long. But I kind of had this, like, what's the big deal, like, response, because I thought World of Warcraft already did this before.
It has, yeah.
It has done that with this one, yeah. So I'm just kind of like, well, why is this making it big? Because we know WoW players. WoW players have a reputation.
Yes.
Like, I feel like $90 is nothing to a WoW player. And so, yeah, and I feel like that's the only reason why they could do that, is because, yes, someone will pay for it, and they will make a chunk of change for sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's a logic behind it.
That's all there is to say, really. Unfortunately, other than that, it's yeah, you are right, and it sucks to have this stuff, but once again, it might go away, because there are bubbles of younger people online who are kind of just like, you pay for that stuff, and then they're kind of like slowly rising up. But and a lot of other games recently, I mean, not microtransactions, but games themselves we have successfully voted with our wallet to an extent. Although, unfortunately, we've seen the consequence of that is studios shutting down, and people losing their jobs.
Yeah, publishers will just take their ball and go home.
Yeah, so it's a double, oh shit, what's the quote? Whatever. A difficult game, the only winning move is not to play, or something.
Oh, yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but
Connor,
that's it.
Did you?
Well, I just wanted to say that I think the only thing you got wrong here is that it's overcomplicated. It is stupid, but it's fairly simple. It's one person does one thing, one person does another thing, and they do that 6 times, and you can get a mount.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's like someone buys the token and they put it on the auction house. Someone else buys the token from the auction house, and then they decide whether or not they want to spend it on not paying for game time or putting it in their BattleNet wallet.
Yeah, I guess what I was, and I don't know whether or not you think that's complicated or not. I guess my larger point is that a lot of those processes are obfuscation, and they're there to confuse, and because they don't, and to bypass certain laws. Like, that's why so many games, have like secondary currencies and stuff like that. You buy crystals. You can't just, in Candy Crush, you can't just buy a level. You can't just buy more health or whatever. You have to buy purple crystal things or whatever, so that you can keep going, because if you were just to spend money directly, that would trigger certain things and certain legalities. So it's like, instead you have to find these loopholes, and then you have to obfuscate that, and that's where psychological manipulation gets into it, because If you know you're paying $20 for something, maybe you won't. But if it's 5,000, 5,000 WoW bucks, and you don't know the exchange rate there, then you may be more willing to do things. I don't know. It's just that whole entire world is just so seedy and wrong, and I hate how much it has affected gaming. And yeah, but we could have had this discussion 10 years ago. We could have had this discussion 6 months ago. We'll have this discussion in another 5 years probably. But anyway, these things suck. Do we? But we didn't. We don't have tidbits. Do we have one tidbit?
I have one tidbit.
I'm playing the tidbit sounder. What if I told you, in this world, there are bits, there are tids, and Richard is the only man who can put them together.
What's that?
You were laughing.
Into
I wondered if
tidbits.
you missed the sounder.
Yeah, no, I do miss the sounder, but also it's like the tidbit I have isn't a good tidbit.
It's not.
It's bad news. It's bad news.
I didn't remember this.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
sorry.
Okay, let's just wait for a second then.
Okay,
We'll
all
take
right.
a beat. Ready for bad news. I apologize.
No, it's okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Don't Nod Entertainment's top management, led by Oscar Gilbert and Julie Chalamet, initiated a redundancy plan on October 16th, presented as necessary to save the company. The aim is to cut up to 70 jobs.
Just more.
Just more. But they haven't had a good year, so.
And Don't Nod's really expanded to do a lot. It seems like when did Don't Nod start?
I don't know. The first notable game I know from them was
Life is Strange, right?
No, was
No?
Remember Me from Capcom. Capcom published it. It was an action.
Whoa.
It was an action beat 'em up that was very cool. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, that was Don't Nod?
That was Don't Nod, yeah. And then their next thing was Life is Strange. And then ever since
I
then,
remember
yeah.
Remember Me. That was the one where you would like slide and stuff.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then you would go into people's memories and like rewrite their memories so that they would think other things. Yeah.
That was Don't Nod.
That was them, yeah.
That was a late Xbox 360 game, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was like 2011 or 2012.
Yeah, that was like I don't know if it did it have PS4,
No.
Xbox One versions. No, that was just a late 360 game. That
Came out
interesting.
2013.
Yeah, I liked it. I liked it a lot. There were some problems, but it was very cool. But yeah, then they did Life is Strange and hit it big with Life is Strange and pretty much did interactive, like visual movie, video game stuff like Telltale. And then they did. I was really excited for it, and I just haven't got to it yet. I think it came out this year, or did it come out last year? Banishers. Ghosts of New Eden. I really wanted to play that. I still want to play it. I just haven't got to it yet.
Yeah, they've done that. Vampire. So they've really
that was them.
they've really like expanded it into different genres, and then they did Jusant, the climbing game, which I really want to play really bad, which I haven't gotten to. So yeah, they've expanded a lot.
But yeah, Banishers didn't do too hot as far as I'm aware.
It didn't.
No.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah, I mean, critically it was good, but nobody cared. And it came out during a slow time too.
And they have a big
Came out
game.
February this year.
Oh, February? Okay. Oh, well, yeah, that was kind of a busy month, actually. Busy end of month.
And they have a big game coming out soon, don't they? Isn't
Life is Strange, the newest one, comes out this month?
But isn't there something else? Aren't they doing like not Star Wars, but aren't they doing like a big IP? For some reason, maybe I'm thinking of a different studio here, but for some reason I feel like Don't Nod is working on like
Don't Nod's next release is Lost Records Bloom and Rage.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, maybe not then. Maybe I'm thinking of somebody else, because for some reason I thought that they had a big an upcoming big like licensed IP or something like that. So okay.
Oh, Remember Me was their first game. Yeah.
Well, never mind then. You're just proud of yourself.
About what?
Come on.
About knowing
you said
things?
that with a huge smile. Look at you.
About
Look
knowing
at
things?
you. Okay, follow us on Twitter and don't follow us. Go to youtube.com. Go to Blue Sky. Go to our Blue Sky. Follow us on Blue Sky if you want. I post every now and then. I posted something today about what we were going to talk about tonight. I don't know. I'm not a social media person. I just can't do that. So I don't know. Whatever. Patreon.com. Go check out the new video about Flathead, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.